She rejected you? Here's how to handle it without begging or breaking down. You gave your time, your attention, your energy. Maybe you planned around her. Maybe you waited for her text. Maybe you held back your real opinions just to keep things smooth. And in the end, she ghosted. She said she's not ready. Or worse, she left your message on read and popped out with someone else 2 weeks later. You know what that feels like? It's like putting your soul on sale and realizing nobody even walked into the store. But this ends now, because if you've ever been rejected this video, this is the moment everything changes. Comment, I am the prize. Number 1. Don't take it personal. Rejection feels like an attack, especially when you've been taught that effort should always equal reward. But real life doesn't work that way, and the sooner you grasp that truth, the faster you break out of the trap of trying to make people like you who never had the capacity to see your worth in the first place. Because the harsh truth is that not every no means you're not good enough. Sometimes it means they were never capable of offering what you were looking for. And that has nothing to do with your value as a person, but everything to do with who they are, what they're going through, and most importantly, what they're not willing to admit about themselves. Because when someone rejects you, especially after you've opened up, shown vulnerability, or made space in your life for them, it can feel like they're rejecting every part of you, your character, your dreams, your energy, your looks, your efforts. But you have to separate their response from your identity, because if you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life adjusting yourself for people who don't even know who they are, let alone what they want. And that's the real danger, becoming someone you're not just to earn the approval of someone who wouldn't even recognize the real you if they saw it. Because when you take rejection personally, you internalize someone else's confusion as your fault, and you begin to operate from the assumption that you must fix yourself to be liked, loved, or even tolerated. That's how you end up tolerating disrespect, compromising your values, and giving second, third, and fourth chances to people who didn't even value the first one. Because you're not chasing love at that point, you're chasing validation. And validation is the cheapest form of currency in any relationship, because it's based on emotional debt and approval addiction. And if you're addicted to approval, then you'll sacrifice anything to avoid being disliked or abandoned, including your own peace. And that's the real cost of taking rejection personally. You trade your self-respect for the illusion that one day they'll come around and realize how much you cared. But real talk, if someone needed to lose you to recognize your value, then they were never qualified to receive it in the first place, because your worth should never have to prove itself through pain. And yet so many people are out here treating rejection like a challenge instead of a boundary, as if no is a locked door they need to kick down instead of a divine redirect, steering them away from someone who doesn't have the depth, the maturity, or the loyalty to build something real. And the real tragedy is not the rejection itself. It's the way you let it change how you see yourself. Because when your self-image is built on external approval, then every rejection chips away at your core until you no longer know who you are without someone else's affirmation. And that's where most men lose themselves, not in the act of being rejected, but in what they make it mean about themselves. And that meaning, that's what controls your next move. Whether you build or break, whether you elevate or collapse, whether you rise or beg. And this is why Stoicism isn't just a philosophy, it's survival. Because when you start to understand that your peace isn't supposed to be disturbed by every rejection or negative opinion, you stop giving your energy to things that were never yours to control. And instead, you begin to master your response, because that's the only thing you'll ever fully own. Not who accepts you, not who stays, not who loves you the way you wish they would, but how you show up when they don't, and how you choose to move forward with your dignity untouched, your vision intact, and your confidence unshaken. Because here's what they never told you. Rejection is not always a loss. Sometimes it's a shortcut to freedom, a divine filter clearing out distractions before you commit to something that would have wrecked your growth. And yes, it hurts. And yes, it feels unfair. And yes, you probably replay conversations wondering what you could have done differently. But that's just your ego trying to rewrite the past instead of preparing for the future. And if you're always in rehearsal mode, you'll miss the show. And this life is the real stage, and your audience is you. Your conscience, your inner standard, your code. Not her, not them, not anyone who didn't stay. Because they don't get to write your story just because they appeared in a chapter. And the day you stop needing other people to finish your sentences is the day you become truly free. Because the version of you that believes you're not enough just because someone couldn't handle you is a version built on lies, and if you don't kill that lie, it will kill your progress. And worse, it'll attract more people who see that doubt in your eyes and feed off it. Because let's be real, predators smell insecurity, and they'll use your need for acceptance to control you, to breadcrumb you, to keep you half hopeful and half confused, and you'll call it love. But it's not. It's manipulation wrapped in politeness, and the only way to escape it is to stand firm in your own approval, your own standards, your own belief that even when they walk away, you remain whole, not fractured, and that wholeness becomes your foundation, your fuel, your freedom. And once you stop taking rejection personally, you stop chasing ghosts and start building presence, power, and peace from within. And that's when they come back, not because you begged, but because you stopped needing them, and that kind of energy. That's magnetic, but by the time they return, you'll have leveled up so hard, their access expired. That's exactly why you need the Stoic relationship blueprint, not just to recover, but to rise permanently. This isn't just a book, it's a blueprint, filled with timeless principles that will rewire how you see rejection, relationships, and yourself. And now, the audiobook version is finally here, so you can plug in your earphones and absorb this life-changing wisdom while you're walking, lifting, running, or just reclaiming your time. Imagine healing while evolving, growing while moving. Imagine knowing that every principle you're hearing is building you back stronger, smarter, and unshakable. The link is in the comments. Get it, and build the kind of life that makes begging and chasing something you'll never do again. Number 2, don't beg, don't chase. Every time you send that one more text, just checking in, just trying to get a reaction, hoping maybe today is the day she sees your worth, what you're really doing is teaching her that you're okay being an option, not a priority, and it doesn't matter how good your intentions are or how pure your heart is, because when someone senses that you're willing to break your own standards just to win them over, it doesn't make them love you. It makes them question your strength, and whether you want to admit it or not, chasing after someone who clearly told you they don't want to go any further with you is the quickest way to destroy the very thing you're trying to prove you have: value. Because what you're signaling is that their opinion of you matters more than your opinion of yourself. And if that's the energy you carry into every interaction, then every relationship becomes a negotiation for your worth instead of a space for connection. And that desperation, that need to be chosen, to be validated, to be rescued from rejection, it's exactly what keeps you stuck in patterns that slowly eat away at your confidence. Because if you're always chasing, you're never choosing, and people can feel that energy before you even open your mouth. And once they sense that you'll stay even when you're not wanted, they stop respecting you. Because let's be brutally honest, how can anyone respect someone who doesn't respect themselves enough to walk away when the door is clearly closed? And yet here you are rereading messages, decoding one-word replies, convincing yourself that if you just said it differently, acted differently, gave more space, less space, more effort, more emotion, maybe then she'd realize what she missed. But she won't, not because you're not enough, but because you're not hard to lose. And if you're not hard to lose, you'll never be easy to love. Because real connection is not built on convincing, it's built on mutual clarity. And what you need to face is the fact that begging for someone to change their mind is not romantic. It's a betrayal of your own dignity. And if you ever want to become the version of yourself that commands respect without asking for it, that moves with purpose, that attracts the right people effortlessly, then you have to stop making people your purpose, especially the ones who already showed you they don't want to be there. Because when you make someone the center of your emotional world and they reject you, it feels like the whole world collapsed. But that's not heartbreak, that's identity confusion. And that happens when you build your self-image around being liked instead of being real. Because the truth is, most people don't even know what they want. And you're here adjusting your worth, trying to win them over, when they haven't even figured themselves out. And that's not love. It's chaos. And the moment you realize that peace doesn't require participation from people who don't value you, you begin to reclaim your energy, your focus, your attention. And it's not about becoming cold or arrogant. It's about becoming unavailable to spaces that drain you. Because if you keep chasing rejection, you'll never arrive at growth. And that's why Stoic principles matter more now than ever. Because they teach you to focus on what's in your control. Your reaction, your energy, your direction, and you need to hear this. Chasing someone who's not choosing you is a form of self-abandonment. And you can't build confidence while simultaneously abandoning yourself. And you wonder why you feel lost, numb, or tired. It's because your energy is going into a black hole of trying to change someone's mind instead of improving your own path. And that's the cycle. You chase, they withdraw. You panic, you give more, they lose interest. And now you're emotionally bankrupt, trying to afford love that should have been freely reciprocated. But the game doesn't stop until you do. Until you stop texting first, stop checking their feed, stop replaying conversations that already ended. Because if the only reason you feel okay is when they're paying attention, then what you have isn't connection, it's dependency. And no amount of pretending will change that until you get honest with yourself and admit that you've been begging for crumbs instead of demanding a seat at your own table. And that table is sacred, and not everyone gets an invitation, especially not someone who left you in confusion, silence, and doubt. Because let's call it what it is. Chasing is emotional servitude. It's giving someone the power to define your peace, your mood, your direction, and you were never designed to be that weak. But this world has trained you to believe that being persistent is romantic, that waiting patiently while someone strings you along is noble, that sacrificing your pride is what real love looks like. But it's not, because love is not one-sided sacrifice. It's mutual presence. And if you're always the one reaching out, checking in, initiating conversations, making plans, trying harder, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And the longer you perform, the more you lose yourself, until one day you wake up and realize you don't even recognize the man in the mirror, the one who used to have boundaries, dreams, standards, and now is stuck in a loop of hoping she'll come around. But hope without self-respect is a prison, and you deserve better than that. You deserve your own focus, your own growth, your own evolution, and that starts with cutting the emotional leash that's got you tied to someone who already walked away. And that cutting, it's not about blocking them to send a message. It's about blocking off their influence from your life, because if they didn't value your presence, then they don't deserve your updates, your energy, your thoughts, or your progress. And when you do that, something changes. Your body stands taller, your voice steadies, your mind clears, and that desperation starts to die, replaced by a quiet strength that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't flinch when someone leaves, because now your power is in your control, and that, more than anything, is what makes you unstoppable. Number 3, cut off contact. You don't owe anyone the right to access you after they've shown they can live without you, and the biggest mistake most people make after rejection is leaving the door half open, telling themselves they're being mature, being civil, keeping it casual, but what they're really doing is leaving a back door open for a person who already walked out the front, and that creates the worst kind of confusion, because it keeps your mind, your emotions, and your focus tied to a version of reality that no longer exists. And every time you check her profile, reply to her story, or find some excuse to stay in her orbit, what you're actually doing is feeding a fantasy, a story in your head that maybe, just maybe, She'll come around if you stay patient, if you stay kind, if you keep being the one who's always there. But ask yourself this: if she already had the best of you and didn't value it, what makes you think she'll respect you more after she realizes you're willing to stay even without her respect? Because that's not strength, it's submission, it's emotional servitude dressed up as loyalty, and it never works. Because what you reward is what continues. And if you reward disrespect with availability, silence with patience, indifference with persistence, then don't be surprised when you keep getting the same results, because nobody values what's always available, especially when that availability comes from weakness, not power. And if she knows you'll stay, text, support, compliment, listen, be her backup option while she explores other choices, then she'll keep you exactly where you've allowed her to keep you. On hold, in the background, emotionally invested while she gives the best of herself to someone who probably doesn't even care. And this is where it gets real. Cutting contact is not about being petty, it's not about revenge, and it's not about trying to make her miss you. It's about choosing yourself with such intensity that you no longer tolerate energy that's lukewarm, because nothing drains you faster than trying to prove your worth to someone who's already shown you they can ignore you. And if you think keeping her on your feed or texting occasionally is harmless, then look at how many times you've waited for a reply that never came, how many times you felt hope rise because she liked a post or sent a meaningless "How have you been?" and how quickly your mind spiraled back into attachment, obsession, analysis, and emotional paralysis. And you call that normal, but it's not, because healing doesn't happen in the presence of your trigger. It happens in the absence of the person who kept you questioning your value, and that absence must be total, complete, and unapologetic, because half distance keeps you half broken, and real healing requires you to remove not just her presence, but her influence, her narrative, her access to your heart, your time, and your attention. And the moment you do that, truly cut off contact without stalking her page, without fishing for signs, without hoping she'll come back, you begin to reclaim the space she was renting in your head. And that's when your mind starts to clear, your energy begins to return, and you finally get to see her not through the lens of your emotional investment, but through reality, and often that reality is harsh. She was never as kind as you painted her, never as deep, never as loyal, and most of the connection was built on your effort, your empathy, your emotional labor, and the idea that one day it would all pay off, but it didn't. And that's not your failure, it's your freedom, because now you know what not to tolerate, what not to repeat, and what standards to enforce moving forward. But none of that wisdom sticks unless you cut the emotional umbilical cord that keeps her tied to your peace. And yes, it's going to hurt. And yes, you're going to miss her. Not because she was the one, but because you gave so much of yourself to the idea of her. And walking away means grieving not just the person, but the hope, the dreams, the story you built. And that grief is real, but it's not a reason to stay connected, because every message you send reopens the wound. Every view you give her story revalidates her power over you, and every friendly check-in tells your subconscious that she's still your priority. And that has to stop. Not next week, not after one more goodbye, not when you feel ready, but now, because you'll never feel ready to let go of something you're emotionally addicted to. And that's what this is, an addiction, a cycle of highs and lows, of craving and crashing, and the only way to end it is to detox completely. Remove her from your digital world, block the urge to reach out, change your routine if you have to, delete old pictures, unfollow mutual friends, whatever it takes to break the loop, because you can't build a new life on an old foundation, and you can't become your strongest self while you're still tethered to the version of you who waited for a text that never came. And the beautiful part, once you fully cut off contact, the silence you used to fear becomes your greatest ally, because in that space you begin to hear your own voice again, feel your own strength, and rediscover who you were before you tied your worth to someone who treated you like an option, and that version of you. The one who moves with clarity, who doesn't need attention to feel enough, who doesn't seek closure but creates it through action. That version becomes unrecognizable to the old you and unapproachable to people who don't meet your standard, and that's the point. Cut contact not to punish them, but to protect your future, your peace, your growth. Because the real flex is not showing her what she lost. It's becoming someone she'll never have access to again. Number 4, focus on building yourself. If you're still spending your days thinking about her, replaying what you could have done differently, hoping one day she realizes what she missed, you're wasting energy on a chapter that's already closed. And worse than that, you're letting rejection freeze your progress when it should be fueling your evolution. Because the truth is, the only revenge that's real, the only response that matters, the only comeback that counts is transformation, not into some fake version of yourself designed to impress her or prove a point, but into the man you were always supposed to become before you got distracted by people who were never meant to come with you on the journey. And the reality is, too many people let a setback define them when they should be using it to refine them. And this is the moment where you have to make a decision. Are you going to stay stuck in the identity of someone who was rejected? Or are you going to rise as someone who was redirected? Because pain without purpose is a prison, but pain with focus becomes fuel, and you don't need another conversation with her. You need a conversation with yourself, a hard one, the kind where you stop making excuses and start taking accountability, where you stop blaming her and start owning your power, because nobody is coming to fix your life. Nobody is going to hand you a second chance, and the only thing you can control right now is how you respond to the rejection. And that starts with redirecting your energy, every ounce of hurt, confusion, frustration, and bitterness into becoming stronger, sharper, clearer. Because the best version of you doesn't chase, doesn't wait, doesn't beg, and doesn't break down when someone fails to recognize your value. He builds, he improves, he invests in his future like it's the only thing that matters. And you know what happens when you do that? You stop caring whether or not she regrets losing you because you're too busy building a life that feels good without her in it. And that's the key, making your life so fulfilling that her absence becomes irrelevant. And that doesn't happen with time. It happens with intention, with discipline, with action, every single day, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because healing is not passive. It's not scrolling quotes or watching videos that hype you up for 5 minutes and then fade. Healing is work. Healing is showing up, setting goals, stacking wins, staying consistent even when nobody is watching. And if you're serious about transforming your life, you need to make your pain useful, because wasted pain turns into bitterness, but converted pain turns into power. And this isn't about proving anything to her. It's about proving everything to yourself, because you don't rise when people validate you. You rise when you start walking in a direction that demands you leave behind everything that kept you average, and that includes the old habits, the weak excuses, the victim mindset, and most of all, the obsession with people who walked away. Because the faster you realize they were just a detour, the faster you can return to the mission. And that mission isn't external, it's internal, it's personal, it's sacred, and it starts the moment you say no to distractions and yes to discipline. And discipline doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means doing the right things consistently, and those right things look like setting a schedule and sticking to it, working out not to impress her but to respect your body, reading not to sound smarter but to expand your mind, saving money not to stunt but to build security, speaking truth not to please but to protect your peace, and surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to grow, not people who drain you to stay small. And you don't do this for followers or clout or approval. You do it because you know what it feels like to depend on someone emotionally and get left hanging, and you never want to be in that position again. You do it because you've tasted rejection and now you're hungry for purpose. You do it because every minute spent crying over who didn't choose you is a minute stolen from the version of you who's waiting to be built. And he's not built through pain alone. He's built through what you do with the pain, through the decisions you make when no one is watching, through the late nights, early mornings, small sacrifices, and big vision. And that vision isn't a fantasy. It's a blueprint. It's the future calling you to level up, to stop looking back, to stop settling, to stop explaining yourself to people who never deserved access to you in the first place. Because the reality is, you never needed her validation to start. You just needed the right moment to stop lying to yourself, and that moment is now, right now. And from this point forward, every time you think of her, let it remind you of your standard, your growth, your focus, not your failure, not your pain, not your weakness. Because you're not that man anymore. You're not chasing broken people, hoping they'll fix the hole in your confidence. You're not waiting for closure from people who gave you chaos. You're not sacrificing your future to relive a feeling that was never fully real to begin with. You're building step by step, brick by brick, choice by choice, and with every rep, every book, every win, you're sending a message, not to her but to yourself, that you're done being the version of you who begged to be seen. You see yourself now, you believe in yourself now, and that belief, that's the foundation for a life so solid, no rejection can shake it. And the irony, by the time you finish building, the very people who doubted you will wish they stayed, but you won't care, because you won't even notice. They'll be watching from a distance, and you'll be too focused on what's next. Number 5. Make your life so good, she's irrelevant. You don't get over someone by waiting for time to do the healing for you. You get over someone by building a life so full, so disciplined, so aligned with your purpose, that the space they once occupied feels laughably small compared to the future you're creating. And if you're still fantasizing about her texting you back, coming to her senses, realizing she made a mistake, then you haven't built enough. Because when your days are packed with progress, your goals are pulling you forward, and your actions are louder than your emotions. The thoughts of who left you start to fade into the background noise of a past you no longer resonate with. And this isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about getting so focused, so committed, so hungry for growth that caring becomes irrelevant. Not because you forced it, but because you've grown out of needing the attention of someone who wasn't built to grow with you. And if you really understood what rejection did for you, you'd be grateful for the loss. Because that loss gave you the silence you needed to find clarity, the pain you needed to wake up, and the space you needed to level up. And if you're still looking at her profile, still watching her life from the sidelines, still wondering what she's thinking, then you're not living, you're observing. And people who live in observation mode never become the main character of their own lives. And the only way to flip that script is to get so busy building that you stop remembering the details of who doubted you, who left, who ignored you, because your new life leaves no room for the dead weight of old fantasies. And it starts with decisions, not dreams, not hoping, not waiting, not wishing, but deciding that every hour you give to bitterness is an hour you're robbing from your breakthrough, and the version of you who thrives is the one who doesn't check up, doesn't chase closure, doesn't post subliminals. He moves in silence, not because he's hiding, but because he's too consumed with creating, and creation is the cure. Building is the breakthrough, because nothing kills old attachments like new purpose, and you won't find that purpose sitting in your room reminiscing. You find it in motion, in workouts that push your limits, in routines that elevate your discipline, in skills that upgrade your income, in goals that stretch your character. And when you stack those wins, one after another, something changes. You stop craving her return, not because she changed, but because you did. And you realize she wasn't the one. She was the wake-up call, the distraction, the redirection. And now your vision is clearer than ever. Because when you build a life rooted in progress, the pain becomes a memory, not a home. And you stop seeing her as the one that got away and start seeing her as the one that couldn't stay. Because the real ones don't leave when things get real. They show up. And if she didn't, then she was never capable of walking with the version of you you're becoming. And you don't resent that, you respect it, you accept it, and then you outgrow it. And that's when the shift happens. Not when you pretend to be over her, but when you genuinely forget she existed, not because you erased her name, but because you elevated your standards, and your new life is built so high, so stable, so powerful that her opinion couldn't reach you if it tried, and she might see you eventually, hear about you, stumble on your content, cross paths with your name, and maybe then she'll realize. But by then you won't care, because you'll be too far ahead to look back, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment, because your time is spent with people who get it. Your energy is invested in missions that matter, and your peace isn't up for negotiation, and that's the win. Not getting her back, but getting yourself to the point where she's no longer relevant, no longer a factor, no longer a desire, because what you've built makes her attention feel small, her rejection feel like a gift, and her presence unnecessary, and that life. That's the reward for choosing yourself, for waking up instead of waiting, for building instead of begging, and it's available to you the moment you decide to stop giving value to the people who didn't value you and start pouring all of that time, energy, and focus into the person who needs you the most. The future you, the focused you, the version of you who's no longer available to people who didn't see the worth in staying. And when that version takes over, everything changes, not just your mindset, but your results, your relationships, your income, your body, your peace. And none of it came from her. It came from you, from the moment you realized your greatest power wasn't in being chosen, but in choosing yourself every day, until the life you built becomes so rich, so full, so peaceful that you don't even remember what it felt like to want her back. If you're tired of giving everything and getting disrespected, if you're done being the man who waits, hopes, chases, and still gets left behind, then it's time to change everything, starting with how you think. Society doesn't want you to have this knowledge. They want you soft, confused, chasing women who don't respect you, pouring your soul into people who never planned to stay. But now you have a choice, and the Stoic relationship blueprint is your weapon. It's packed with timeless principles they never wanted you to hear, and now it's available as an audiobook, so you can walk, jog, train, and transform your mindset at the same time. Real growth starts when you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing your own power. Comment, "I choose my power," if you're ready to take it back. Like this video. Subscribe so more men can find these truths and save years of heartbreak, confusion, and silence. The link to your blueprint, it's in the comments. Own it. Listen to it. Live it. Never look back.